So, it looks like Manchester City have registered an interest in Lille and Morocco central midfielder Ayyoub Bouaddi, who has shone at the World Cup for Morocco and at such a tender age is developing into one of the must-watch midfielders in football right now. However, there's been a lot of discussion and a somewhat uproar about the reported price that Manchester City want to sign him for. Lille have made it explicitly clear that if you want to sign Bouaddi now and take him away from the club, it's €100 million or £85 million. That price will drop if you accept that Lille will have him back on loan for another season to continue his development. Either way, I think it's a good deal for whoever signs him because this guy is the real deal. In many years after the signing, people will be fawning over Bouaddi and wishing their club had been the ones that had signed him. Whether that's 85 million or 60 million, it's a price that's actually worth paying because he's that good. But this is more than just World Cup hype. This is more than just a one-season wonder, as I've seen people online call him. This is a guy that's been performing at a high level for Lille in a top 5 European league for a number of years now. This is a guy that made his debut at 16 in the Champions League. He then, in the Champions League, didn't look out of place against a Real Madrid side at a young age. He's still in his teens now. He's shown that in the World Cup, when called upon, he can be reliable, he can be comfortable on the ball, positionally aware, tactically aware, and just an all-round very, very, very talented player. But what exactly is it that makes him so good? Well, firstly, he's an athletic central midfielder, which is a given with some of the players that are coming through now, but we're going to evaluate just how athletic he can be because he's the type of player that is defensively very sound, defensively switched on, intelligent, so impressive for someone of his age, but he's also got a great balance to him. He's the kind of guy that very rarely gets knocked off the ball, but he can also dribble. He can dribble in a way that, I was watching a video that Statman Dave had done about Bouaddi a couple of days ago, and he likened his dribbling style to Kaká. Maybe not necessarily in the pace of the way that Kaká did it, but in the way that a player of his height has great balance, can move with the ball, can break forward with the ball, and is very rarely knocked off the ball. He's technically a very strong midfielder. He's technically the kind of guy that has various ranges of passes, but will more often than not in this Lille team be happy to play a safer pass, to retain the possession. He's the kind of player that actually, in a ball-dominant team, he would look far more impressive than he already does, which is incredible considering how impressive he already looks now. Bouaddi is the type of character that it doesn't really matter what type of team you put him in, he will find a way to excel. In ball-dominant teams, he's clever enough to retain possession, to stay in shape, to make sure that he keeps the ball, plays safe with the ball, but also is capable of taking risks and playing forward passes, breaking lines, anything along those lines. But he's also capable in a team that have their back against the wall to keep his defensive shape, to intelligently move with the rest of the squad, with the rest of the team, and keep his shape, not letting anybody breach the back line. It's incredibly important for a player of his age that he's capable and adept of performing at this level already, while also showing that in times with Lille, he's played in multiple positions. He's played as an 8. In a 4-2-3-1, he's been that right-sided defensive midfielder. He's even played as a centre-back, and he's played as well as a right-back. He's played as a right-back, and I actually think in an Enzo Maresca team, that might be a position where he excels in regularly. Not because he's a high-flying right-back that many people associate, but he's the kind of guy that could play the inverted right-back role that Maresca has done with Reece James at times, because he's so comfortable on the ball. He's so comfortable going forward, but he's also comfortable controlling the play in the way that Maresca likes his teams to do. So that's why Bouaddi is the kind of guy that Manchester City really should be looking to sign, because he's so incredibly talented at a variety of positions. Personally, I'm not saying that I know more than Enzo Maresca because he's obviously the Manchester City manager and has won things with Chelsea, but I personally prefer to see him as a right defensive midfielder or in a 4-2-3-1. I actually think that's the kind of formation that we might see him in, with City rotating with Elliot Anderson alongside Rodri. Then again, a 4-3-3 would manage to complement all three of them into the team, and that would be a pretty imposing midfield, provided Rodri stays, of course, and that's a big question, depending on if Real Madrid, or anybody else really, can find the funds to pry Rodri away from Manchester. So I suppose the next bunch of questions to arise from this whole situation is he worth the money? Well, quite frankly, it's impossible to tell. Would I have paid 100 million euros for him? I can sit here and talk glowingly about how good he is. I spoke earlier to people in the summer about how good this guy is. I've been on Sirius XM, and I believe my actual words were, watch out for Bouaddi, somebody's going to pick up an absolute star with this guy. That was me under the impression that someone would be paying a maximum of £60 million for him, because yes, World Cup tax is a thing, but it's not enough to bump up a price. Ultimately, what is bumping up the price if Manchester City were to sign him from Lille is the fact that they would want him now and not loan him back to Lille for another season. That's why I think teams have kind of been put off the price, is because he's good enough to improve teams now. The three teams that I look at and think he would suit best are, in no particular order, Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain and Arsenal, because he's good enough to hold his own within their teams on the ball, but also he can put in a shift wherever needing. And in a team like Arsenal that have been, from time to time, had their back against the wall, as we've seen in the Champions League final against Paris Saint-Germain, and against other top teams where it's needed that they've just sat back and soaked up pressure, he's a player that can do that. But are Arsenal going to shift £60 million to £85 million on a player that is going to play every now and again, especially when they're linked with Bruno Guimaraes, who is Premier League proven, Premier League ready, and keen on the move? It's a question mark. Paris Saint-Germain today have come out and said that they are not looking at reinforcements in the midfield. They have prioritised the defence and the attacking depth, identifying that the midfield is basically as good as they want it to be, especially when you've got, Vitinha's in there, Gian Neves is in there, Fabian Ruiz is in there, Warren Zaire-Emery's in there. It's a 4-3-3 predominantly. I would like to hope that they use a couple more youngsters in there rather than going out and spending loads of money on another one. But nevertheless, they've decided they want to move on from that, which pretty much leaves Manchester City as one of the only suitors who A, couldn't afford him, and B, have shown public interest in signing him. Ultimately, what this means is Bouaddi is the type of player that improves a lot of teams across Europe. He's a very versatile player who can play a number of positions in the middle of the park, whilst also filling in at centre-back and right-back when needed. He's very agile, he's very defensively minded, he's very intelligent for a player of his age, he never looks flustered on the ball, and when he came up against Brazil at the World Cup for Morocco, there was never a moment where you looked at him and went, he's out of his depth here. He was like a duck to water. He felt at home, and the commentary team here in the United Kingdom, who were really getting their first glimpses of him, understood that and accepted this guy is one for the future. Would he be physically capable of matching up with the Premier League? Of course he would. I spoke in yesterday's video about Manu Kone and how players that are developed in Liga physically are capable more often than not of coping with what the Premier League demands are. A player of his age, you look at him and you don't expect him to be as well built as he is. You look at him and think he could be 22, 23, not still in his teen years. Would I feel more confident about the move if Pep Guardiola was in charge? 100% I would. But he's not there. There's nothing you can do about that. And Enzo Maresca is a manager that Manchester City have identified for this, and he's not too dissimilar in the way that Pep Guardiola plays. Maybe if you give him better tools than he had at Chelsea, he'll get better results and he won't fall out with the club the way he did at Chelsea. And I think signing players like Elliot Anderson and Bouaddi are two steps in the right direction of signing an incredibly gifted, incredibly talented midfield. Now, does he push them further towards winning the title? Right now, I think there's still question marks on that. It's easy to forget that Manchester City really are in a rebuild. They've lost players like in the past couple of years. They've lost players like Kevin De Bruyne, like Bernardo Silva. These players have gone. John Stones has gone. Players that have got a winning mentality that kind of really dragged City over the line in multiple campaigns. But that being said, they've still got an outstanding team. You know, they've still got arguably the best goalkeeper on the planet in Donnarumma in goal. Ruben Diaz is no slouch. Nico O'Reilly was fantastic last year. Let's say, hypothetically, that midfield three is Rodri, Elliot Anderson and Ayyoub Bouaddi. Even if you take Bouaddi out of it and put someone in like Ryan Cherki in, That's still one of the most enjoyable midfields to watch in the Premier League. Jeremy Doku, fantastic player. Erling Haaland, one of the best strikers on the planet. Semenyo, Foden. I'm sure I'm missing out a load of players as well that many people will notice as well, but that's a fantastic team. One that Bouaddi improved. As mad as this is going to sound, it's the type of money, £85 million, that if they sign him now, develop him for the next 5 years, he hits his prime years with Man City and he develops into the player that he really can be, by that time people will be looking at this signing going, it's an absolute bargain. It's the kind of signing they need to make now to avoid somebody else making it, so you're not sat there in a couple of years' time going, God, I wish we'd have just paid the money for him. He's that good, I wish we'd have just done this. Because if financially Real Madrid, Barcelona and those teams were on par, he'd be playing for one of them. He wouldn't look out of place for them in his prime, and he hasn't even hit his prime yet. He's still young in his career. He's still going to develop more into a really world-class player, and you can tell that now. Sometimes you can look at the statistics, and I saw a statistic earlier about dribbling stats for the most dribbles completed for midfielders under 23 in Europe's top 5 leagues. Bouaddi's fourth on that list with 23 completed dribbles. Elliot Anderson, his potential new Manchester City teammate, is first with 35. You put those two in front of Rodri, who can win the ball, recycle possession and let them go on with it, you've got a really dangerous and potent midfield there. I think it's a signing that Manchester City should be going for. I think it's a signing that Manchester City fans should be excited for. Put the money to one side, this player is going to cost a premium because you look at the prices that midfielders are costing these days. Elliot Anderson over 100 million, Sandro Tonali over 100 million, Matheus Fernandes £85 million. It's a lot of money to pay these players. Bruno Guimaraes is a player that Newcastle value as £100 million for a 29-year-old. And if you got it, spend it. And if you got it, spend it wisely. And spending it wisely means signing Ayyoub Bouaddi before Paris Saint-Germain do it or Arsenal sneak in and do it. It's the kind of signing you have to make if you want to be a top team. If it's me, get the deal done. £85 million might seem like a lot of money, and I can't still get my head around players that aren't the top 3 in their position in the world going for that money, but that's the way football is now. Get the deal done, pay the money for him, reap the rewards, and in years to come, look back and go, wow, what a signing he's been. Thank you for watching the video. If you've got this far, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment on any of the social platforms. I really appreciate anybody that actually watches and subscribes to the channel. It's good just to get in front of the camera to chat about some of the players and give insight into some players that probably come into your club or come into the Premier League. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.